Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World episode 177. I'm your host John Jordan. Don't forget to check out my daily email about blockchain gaming. You can find that at gamestx.substack.com. In today's episode I'm talking to David Johansson, who is the CEO at MetaKing Studios. Had David on the podcast about a year ago when we were talking about the launch of Blocklords, big PC strategy game that is still ongoing. In this episode, talking, at least in the beginning, more about Blocklords Dynasty, which is the companion-based browser, fully on-chain game on Base that launched a couple of months ago. Got very popular in July because it was part of the Lords token airdrop. But more generally with David, he's been in the space for a long time. He's building for the future. So we talk generally about how you sort of balance some of the short-term aspects of being a blockchain game developer with some of the long-term sort of ideas of what he wants to do in the game, some really cool features he wants. The battle mode is coming out end of this year, early next year. So we talk about that sort of stuff. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Please do subscribe. Every week we're putting out new episodes, so don't miss out. And on with the show. Hello everybody and welcome to the show. Very pleased I have David from Blocklords on the show, CEO of MetaKings, to give him his full title. How's it going, David?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on again. Great to be here.
Yeah, so we had you on, I think about October last year, I seem to remember, when Blocklords, we have to say now, the main PC game was going live, and I was getting into that, and having you back on now, that I don't know, I call it a companion game, maybe you want to correct me, but we've had Blocklords Dynasty, which has been pretty successful. We'll talk about that. We've had the launch of the Lords token, obviously, probably interesting from your point of view to launch a blockchain token, and a bunch of other stuff to talk about. But yeah, first, I guess let's talk a little bit about Blocklords Dynasty. So do you want to, in your own words, sort of explain what you were thinking about that? Because it's a browser-based game. It's sort of, as I say, companion game linked to the main game. But what was the thinking behind that launch, which actually launched at the start of July and is still live?
Yeah, like you say, it is a companion game. I think that's what we call it as well, side game, or our first foray into a mobile version of Blocklords, which is eventually, for the long-term timeline planned. And essentially there were a few considerations behind launching Dynasty. I think the first was you've played the main game of Blocklords, you kind of get the experience, and what we were doing with Blocklords, the main game, and what we're still doing, and we do have a lot of planned updates. I'll probably tease a few of them towards the end of this for the main game. The idea was always to remove as much friction as possible from the game experience, right? So that's why we didn't want the users to get bogged down with wallet creation. We didn't want them to have to wait for blockchain transactions to get confirmed. We really wanted to remove as much friction as possible from the actual game experience, which I do think we achieved in terms of that onboarding process. There's not a lot of, it is a complex game, so I'd say it's still complex, but we at least removed a lot of the Web3 kinks from it. At the same time, we are maximalists in a way, and we do believe in on-chain gaming. We got started, I think our first conversation about Blocklords was back in 2019 or 2020. So we've really gone full circle in that we started as a fully on-chain game before there was any infrastructure in place. Then we kind of went the opposite route. It was like, let's remove the friction completely and add the on-chain elements as a side note, so to say. But a lot of feedback we were getting early on in the year from a variety of partners, especially as we were bracing for the token launch, because we've been obviously working on this for several years now, was, but you guys don't have any on-chain transactions, there's not that many actual NFT transactions. And we were like, yeah, that's kind of the point. It's like, it's optional, right? Like, we got a lot of users. They don't all have to be on-chain. But we did really keep getting this feedback of, hey, you guys need more on-chain transactions. Like, that's how people measure traction, right, in this space. And at the same time, the blockchain space is very hype driven, right? So the ability to be able to show good numbers, because we knew we had it in us to really create something viral. But the problem was, if we did that off chain, it's kind of like this, oh, nobody believes you, right? Yeah. So that's definitely not the only factor, but that was a factor, is like we were getting some external pressure, like, hey, you guys need more on-chain data. And so we had two choices, right? Like, either put the main game fully on-chain or partially on-chain, but we did believe that would make the experience slower and hurt the experience of the main game. And then we also had another issue, which was that our heroes, which were NFTs, did have a lot of in-game utility, but not enough, right? And we are planning a lot of features for heroes in the main game, but those are very related to battles. And the battle system, which I'll talk about later, is still in development. There's still quite a lot to do. We didn't want to rush out the battle systems just so that we could add hero utility. And that's kind of where Dynasty came from, right? It's like, how do we do a side game that's fully on chain with as little friction as possible, still knowing that there will be friction because it is fully on chain. And then that puts the hero and hero utility at the core of the entire game experience, right? Yep. And so that's where Dynasty came from. Of course, we still wanted the onboarding to be as easy as possible. And that's why we ended up going with Base, which had very low fees, very low transaction costs, right? And very fast times, transaction times. And also we started partnering with Privy. If you play the game, you experienced that, where the user doesn't have to worry about seed phrases or anything like that. Whereas we would create the wallet for the users in a secure way. And they just had to use their email for logins. And the Base element kind of added a little bit to that as well, because Base has a new product called Paymaster. And with Paymaster, we were actually able to sponsor users' gas. And that was really a game changer. And that is, I do think that's a big reason for the growth we had, is that a new user in Blocklords Dynasty doesn't have to pay their own gas. We actually sponsor 5 transactions. We give you an NFT for free. We let you actually experience something for free without having to start spending, which, as you know, is a huge user acquisition hurdle. So kind of all of this came together and led to the launch of Dynasty a few months ago.
Yeah, I have to confess, I think you launched it early July, and I was busy with other things, so I didn't sort of get onto it till sort of a couple of weeks in. But that was sort of interesting because that was really when it sort of took off. So I guess one sort of key thing around that was, as you say, you sort of thought about the product and getting people in there, but also it was the third sort of campaign in terms of the Lords token going live. So you had this, for the first month, I suppose, you had this idea that people were collecting these in-game sort of points, and then you were then spending them to get these orbs, and then the orbs at some point in the future still will be burnt for Lords tokens. So there was a sort of nice airdrop thing going on there. But obviously, whenever you have that sort of airdrop or play to airdrop sort of thing, you get a lot of bots. And obviously, since that campaign ended, your transactions have come down quite a lot. So obviously, I guess, I've been writing about bots a lot on my Substack and things like that. And as someone who's, obviously you want to grow your audience, you want to have that virality. So you're going to get bots. I guess you don't want it all to be bots, but you don't want to banned too many things. Actually, I got my account banned for I'm not quite sure why at some point. I got it unbanned.
Did you get it back?
Okay.
You got it back? Okay.
I don't know. Was I a bot? No. So how was that sort of? How did you find that sort of balance of obviously you want to scale, but you want to sort of keep it in some sort of sort of control.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely challenging, and here for us also, bots are a cost, right? Because we'd have to pay for their gas, right? At least partially. So definitely, it was interesting because the point system was on right away. The user acquisition wasn't like instant. It was definitely like a growth phase. Actually, we launched in June, I believe, second week of June, if I'm not. Unless I've morphed my times. But in the beginning, it's always slow. It's slow launching when we're fixing up bugs and things. So in the beginning, it was only a couple thousand users daily. And really what kicked things off was when we launched the orb system. That was a couple weeks in. Launching the orb system, that's when NFT or token rewards really came in. Because we did have the dual system as well, where your NFT hero fights against other heroes. The problem with that one is as you get higher up in the leagues, and the high leagues are the ones with big rewards, you're playing against the OGs, right? Like the guys who have really amassed like the best heroes. So it was extremely cutthroat, which is something we do want as part of the reward system, is there's an element where only the best players are going to win, which obviously a lot of players don't like, but I think that's important, right? To have these kinds of systems. So that's the first kind of way of the design, is like, you have some systems that are developed for mass appeal, where everybody has a chance, where it's more about the time you put in. But then we have some that are more skill-based or asset-based, right, where you really do need the right hero and the right strategy to win. And actually, it's funny because some of the players who got to the higher ranks, they didn't have the best heroes, but they were really tenacious, or they played the right way. And it was all about how you recover the HP of your hero and how you deploy them, right? But to answer your question, when the users really started popping up, when we started giving out the referral system.
Okay.
And the referral system was you would I don't remember the exact numbers. Sorry about that, but it's around 5,000 renown you would get for referring someone, and then
Okay.
the higher their house level, the more renown you got, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really when it started snowballing. Also, what we saw a lot of user acquisition success with was partnerships.
Okay.
Mocaverse, for example, we did a big partnership with them, which also led to a token airdrop to their community. I believe we got 90,000 users just from that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our friends at Carve, I believe they
Yeah.
brought in 30,000 users or so.
Okay.
So that is kind of the good part of Web3 ecosystems, right? Is you can kind of feed off each other and bring users to each other's ecosystem, and that's something that didn't exist, 3-4 years ago when we were working on different projects. So yeah, essentially, bots are a problem in this industry. At the same time, the industry values user numbers, right? And the
Yeah.
industry values transaction numbers. So it's hard for me to say exactly the ratio. We have been fighting about it, fighting against it. I believe we blocked 25,000 accounts so
Okay.
far that had either bought it too much or abused the system or exploited the systems. And that's kind of the thing too. As a Web3 game dev, you're always kind of at war with a certain part of your player base,
Yes.
which does make it difficult, right? But overall, what we really wanted to show was, hey, it's possible to make on-chain games that can scale, right? And I think we proved that. I think last month we had 43% of the gas spend on Base Network, which is kind of insane.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's sort of. I mean, in a sense, it's sort of good timing because I think looking at the data, it seemed to be sort of quite. The peak seemed to be quite different. I saw one on June Analytics had you at 250,000 dailies as a peak, and that radar had you.
That was the launch day. That was the token launch day.
but that was weird because but then that radar had you on 100 on the same day had about 140,000. So I guess it depends exactly what smart contracts they're looking at. But anyway, you were I think you're the first game on Base to get to over 100,000, and even now, you're still on maybe sort of 30,
yeah,
30,
30, 40.
And I guess that's more the interesting bit for me because those are clearly people. Now you sort of switch to this new sort of event where all the functionality is still there, but now you're basically getting in-game weapons and gear, and then you can sort of fuse that, and it's and that sort of just gets you sort of faster progression into the sort of the main game, which is collecting this renowned point system, which then you level up your house, and also it feeds into the Blocklords main game battle pass. So it actually really shows you've got about 30,000 daily players who really care about the game because obviously you're playing that maybe for hope of some rewards in the future, but there's not an immediate extractive thing like there was in the past. So that's for the game you are, I think that's pretty. I would be pretty happy with that. So
and 30,000.
Yeah.
30,000 has been around our stable daily active users since about February, March, or nothing. Okay. Sorry, May. We were kind of ramping up from. Because when we spoke last time, I think we were at 1,000 daily actives, maybe a bit under
that was
that.
early, wasn't it? Yeah.
So it's definitely grown a lot. We saw a lot of growth in January. That's when we went from about a couple thousand daily. I think we ended the year about 3,000, and then we went from 10,000 to 30,000. We've been kind of stable at 30,000 since then. So I'd say that's our core player base, right? Our core community. What is interesting right now, there's really not a lot of rewards other than renown in the game, but we are working pretty hard on season 2 for Dynasty, which is coming in the coming few months. Something really cool there that I can announce is that we are working with Paymaster, who's the Coinbase led team that handles gas payments for your users, right? And that's a game changer, as I mentioned. What we're working with them on is actually ERC20 payment of gas, right? So users will actually be able to pay for their gas in Dynasty using the Lord's token, the LRDS token.
Okay.
And again, that we think that's something that's really, really interesting. That's going to add a lot of utility to the token, and also increase our ability to give rewards, right? Because it's a bit hard to give rewards when they're going to be sold. It's a different thing to give rewards when they're actually going to be given back to the community and via gas payments. So now that the token's live, we're working quite hard on token utility within Dynasty. So different ways that you can use the tokens to kind of accelerate your progression. and of course kind of throw in a few surprises as well for the second season.
So let's talk about Lord's token a little bit. I mean, obviously, I guess you say you've been working on this for a number of years, and I guess when you put a token, I mean, the token sort of had been live in the game from the start of the year, I think, and you could basically take that Lord's token and you could sort of effectively stake it, and you were getting this in-game sort of point system called influence, which then now you spend in-game to get in-game sort of assets and stuff like that. But it's sort of in the last kind of probably the last 2 or 3 weeks that the token actually sort of went live on exchanges. So obviously, quite a volatile time for token prices. I guess you sort of make a decision and go with it, and that's just how it is. And it's not done too badly, is it? I mean, price seems okay.
We're quite happy.
You're happy?
Yeah, we're quite happy. Okay. I mean, for how the market is, it's kind of strange because had we launched in January, probably would have worth 5 times more. But it's so hard to predict these things. Obviously being on Coinbase has been an amazing experience. We feel really that's a seal of approval that we think the project deserves. Not sure how familiar you are with the listing process across all the exchanges. It's extremely long and unclear most of the times. So I have a lot of stories that I probably can't share here about how all this goes down. But overall an amazing launch, in terms of token excitement, in terms of users, in terms of influencers that covered us. I think the volume was over $40 million, which is insane to have that for a 1-day volume. And overall, it's like a huge kind of weight off our shoulders, because that's always kind of the thing that you're bracing towards, and to have it live now. Obviously, the market's not the best. I think gaming especially has been quite bearish with a lot of retail traders and the Web3 community in general. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of excitement for Telegram games. We're seeing a lot of excitement for the potential of Web3 to bring in users. So I think it's all about just getting to work and keep creating a good game and drawing in users, right?
I guess if I was in your shoes, the sort of, I guess the frustration would be that there are some games now that have been out for sort of a year or so. So Blocklords is sort of one of those. It's you've not been doing the thing where we'll have like an open beta for a month and then take it off again. And, you've been fully there. There's a few other sort of mobile games that have been doing that as well. And maybe it's partly because you say about the visibility of on-chain transactions or NFT prices or something like that. Those sort of projects, I guess Pixels will be another one, I suppose, haven't really seen nothing they've been doing in sort of like the building a game and making a really great game and getting more people playing it has been reflected in the token price. The token price has just been reflected by market sentiment, and we all hate this. And I guess the frustration would be for a quality product in the gaming space, there doesn't seem to be any recognition at all that you're doing sort of good quality stuff, and you're sort of judged as like any old blockchain sort of scam or low quality projects. You don't get any premium on that. But I guess that's where we are.
That's just how it is, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the market's the market. You can't, the market can be irrational longer than you can be solvent, right? that's kind of the idea. So obviously we're solvent, so that's the most important thing, and our focus is on building a strong team and keep creating really cool products. I think that's what we want to do, create a sustainable ecosystem. Obviously, I think what happened in 2021 was NFTs kind of shifted the whole dynamic, and meme coins started then as well, right? The meme coins have really taken over, and to the point where new retail traders almost exclusively look at meme coins, right? And don't really try to understand deeply how to value gaming projects. But I think, again, valuations are extremely tricky in this business. So I think we're all kind of trying to figure it out together. And it does get frustrating at times, but on the other hand, you kind of just have to embrace it. And this is a great market, so we just kind of have to roll with the punches.
Yeah. And I guess also on the subject of Lord's coin is you've started talking a bit about the Lordchain. So you're going to run your own infrastructure. Obviously, people don't know. You've had a whole sort of career in Seascape, which is a whole infrastructure project that you sort of did. In between the launch of Blocklords way back in the day, and then you built this infrastructure. So you sort of know about this sort of stuff. But it is another interesting trend that lots of people now, with the ability to have sort of these open source L2s, lots of people building their own L3s. It seems to be like a big trend. So can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to build your own and what advantages that gives you, rather than going on Base or Arbitrum?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, kind of going back to that old point we had, right, where we have the main game being completely off chain, and then we decided to create something that was quite different, but adding to the whole concept. And that's the thing. I don't want the main game to be off chain. I want the
No.
main game to be on chain, and for users to actually be able to verify. Because what we do now is when you send an NFT to the game, we actually burn it, transfer the
Oh,
metadata
really?
into the
You
game.
can,
Yeah, and then you're playing, and then whenever you're ready, we support three different chains: IMX, Polygon, and Base. Whenever you're ready, you mint a new NFT on that chain, right? So I have a slightly different concept of the NFT than many others, but it's more like the NFT is a plastic box, and what we put inside that plastic box is essentially the thing that's valuable. And so what I always wanted is how do we show people what's going on under the hood with the main game? And we looked at doing it with Base, but at the end of the day, the gas costs do get quite expensive, and it is too slow for us. So essentially, what we've been looking at with Lordchain is how do we create something that we have a bit more control over. That's obviously secure, so based on something open source. That's why we're working with Optimism on this, and we're also closely working with the Base team. So this is going to be Lordchain is going to be a Base layer 3. We released our new cool website for it yesterday, so that was an exciting day. And that's essentially the ideological reason behind launching Lordchain is that we want to be able to verify quickly, easily, cheaply what's going on inside of the game. At the same time, this is a business. Web3 is a very market driven approach, or sorry, not approach, but market driven space. And having our own infrastructure adds a ton of utility to the game, to the token, on top of the game, right? So we all know about the in-game utilities, like you can spend the tokens, you can lock the tokens, you can buy stuff in-game. That's great. That's not really going to make a dent until we have 5, 10, 15 million users, right? And I do think it's going to take a couple more years to really achieve that realistically. So having the chain there really opens up a lot of avenues for validator nodes, staking rewards, and more infrastructure-driven reward mechanisms that are a bit less mercenary, I'd say, than gamer rewards, right? Because gamer rewards do have a quite bad reputation in that they do get sold quite often, whereas the infrastructure reward are a bit more stable and can be a bit more long-term focused. So that's really the idea is more transparency of what happens with your assets when you're playing the main game, and adding a lot of utility to the token, essentially.
Yeah, cool. Good. Going to get into maybe a bit of a quick fire sort of thing about very specifics, because it's good to have you on. So things I would like to talk to that I've experienced in the game. So permadeath in Blocklords Dynasty. So you mentioned these hero characters, and you have this nice. Well, I don't know if it's nice, but you have this concept, you have this idea now where if you're in a duel, so you have duels which are playing against one other character, or missions where you're playing basically sort of PvP, PvE, I suppose. And your NFT has a certain amount of health. It has a maximum health. It has a health that it has at the moment. Over time, that health recovers. But if you take too much damage, it basically goes. The image goes grey on the screen, and it becomes basically dead, a permadeath. And for those, I mean, I quite like that concept. But equally, it's sort of double-edged sword. Why do you think that sort of stuff is important? Because obviously, I've only really had it once where I had a character that I'd bought off the marketplace, I don't know, $20 or something, and it was my bad management, and I didn't realise I was going to take like over 1,000 damage on it. But it's permadeath now, so a little bit of sort of remorse there. Is it just because it's cool?
No, it's always been the core concept. So that was actually very popular with VCs when we first started pitching Blocklords. So they always loved that. Obviously, asset inflation is something that a lot of users care about. I'm saying that we just 1 million minted NFTs on Base, right? So the key is it's important to get a lot of users free assets. But it's equally important to have ways for those assets to disappear over time. Otherwise, you kind of end up with this thing, anybody can get one, or like, why would I get one? So permadeath has always been the concept, and the idea has always been every hero is going to die, and that is going to happen. So I'm just warning you, that is going to happen at some point. Every hero is going to die. For now, this was our test, right? Like Dynasty launched, and that's where Dynasty comes from. Like you start with a hero and you build out a family legacy. So the dual permadeath was the first step. The next step will be family lineage, right? Like I think we were calling it breeding, but it doesn't quite sound right, so we're going to call it
No.
lineage.
Yeah.
So in lineage, you are actually going to be able to marry your heroes, have kids, pass down your skills. Obviously, that becomes a lot of fun. I don't know if you remember CryptoKitties. That was always a lot of fun when you were trying to get the perfect cat. So yeah, we're going to play a lot with that. There's going to be negative traits. There's going to be positive traits, and yeah, over time, we really do want to make it matter. Your heroes are important and they're valuable, and you got to be careful with them, or you can YOLO and maybe win some better rewards. But also very long term, I do think there's a lot of cool utility we can add to dead hero. So I don't know if you tried the mausoleum feature where you send your dead hero back to the main game and earn renown that way. We're going to be exploring a lot with these kind of things, where the more dead heroes you have, the more powerful your legacy or dynasty is. And I do have some, just to tease, we do have some game ideas where only dead heroes will be able to partake. So sort of a Blocklords Valhalla kind of battle game.
Yeah, no, I thought there was some nice sort of secondary features there where you say you can send your dead ones back to the main game and you get some renown every day, and you also get on the battle pass. The more heroes you get killed, the more XP you get. So there's a lot.
Exactly.
So I'm actually going through at the moment trying to get some of my jesters. Jesters are the new characters you bought in they're the ones you get for free. So they're pretty cheap. So you get those wiped out pretty quickly.
Exactly.
Cool. And sort of going back to the main game, which is a strategy game. You start off basically building out your farm. There's a whole bunch of trading in there. And I sort of stopped playing it for a bit, and then I've got back to it with Dynasty. And the thing that really sort of jumps out at me now, which feeds onto what we were talking, I think, back last year, is it really, I think, to do well, and I'm not saying I do well, but it's really very heavily really on trading. Trading is sort of the key. So you can just play the game and you can farm stuff and sort of level things up, but that's pretty slow to. The speed there is pretty slow.
It's grinding.
Whereas you have all these resources that you build, you can trade them within your own area, and you also trade them to other areas, and there's different sort of pricing and different things you can do there. And I've not really looked into that part of the game very much. I would have to say, so I have to build a big database, like a big Excel sheet, like
spreadsheets.
But that's really, that's really, to me, seems more and more that's the heart of the game. That looking at selling things for gold and then using the gold to get other things, and really being quite focused on the resource type.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the trading part isn't important. A lot of players use that really to maximize. But definitely I think there's a lot of opportunity for more things we can do there. A lot more balancing in it's obviously a very big game, and we're only a 45 people team. So there's we need 200 people essentially to really do everything we want to do as well as we can. But yeah, trading is huge. And also what's going to be interesting as the battles get added further down the line, we do have a feature in mind where when you send a caravan to another region, actually other players are going to be able to raid it, right? So right now it's kind of risk-free to trade across region, but over time we do want it to be a bit riskier. Going back to the farming part, which is very time-intensive, and I know you were a little unhappy about that a few months ago, but what we're working on now, especially that the token's out, is that we're adding a bit of utility where you will be able to automate your farming with your heroes and with influence. So we do think that's going to be kind of the next step, because at the end of the day, a lot of players are going to be farming resources in order to go battle. And we do want players to spend most of their time battling. So we'll be working on some automation on that for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll just point out to people that I was was never quite sure if I liked it or not, but you have an interesting. In the basically in a lot of these farming games, you basically switch off the game and it just an hour goes in the real world, an hour goes in the game world, and you come back in and those things you're waiting for an hour have happened. In your game, and I'm not an expert in this, I don't know which is the way games are designed. An hour happens in the real world. If you're not logged into the game and it's running, the hour doesn't happen. I mean, it's like a real time sort of game. So I did actually at one point try and install it on another computer I had so I could keep that running 24/7, but I never got around to do it. So glad to hear automation will be great. That's good. And one other sort of I don't know, it's a minor point. I think you've toned it down a little bit, but when you're farming, you sometimes get a sort of warning attack happening, and these sort of raiders come in and attack your farm, and that's can be pretty brutal, because they basically come in and sometimes they nick your resources, which is fine. Sometimes they come in and kill
everyone.
And it can, you can end up really getting a lot of your sort of workers killed, and then it costs gold to get new ones and stuff. So, are you getting feedback on that, or is that just me? Because
definitely, definitely, and I think it's definitely gotten a lot easier. It's still a bit challenging. Overall, I'm not super happy with the raider system. It was quite, on a technical level, it's quite challenging the way the farming systems were built to add battles into that. So we spent a lot of time just refining and trying to make that work as well as possible. That's why now for the battle system, we're doing a completely new overhaul, essentially, of the code for how the battles will work. But yeah, it's all, in general, since we're in early access, open beta, whatever you want to call it, we tend to kind of start on the extremely hard front because the users are quite hardcore, right? And then ease it over time, right? And our goal is, within a year or two, when we do get out of early access, to have something that's much more streamlined for new users. But for now, it is a growing product, and we like to start on the hard punishing side and ease it up from there.
Yeah, and I think that again is sort of counter to a lot of the ways that most blockchain games work, which is make it easy, get everyone in, it's all fine, we've got 1 million wallets, and and obviously every product will find its own, and I don't think there's any sort of right or wrong on these things, but you guys really do sort of stand out as, obviously you've made this game as a blockchain game, but if it wasn't a blockchain game, I think strategy people would go, this is, there's some pretty hardcore elements in that, which is so I guess it's always easier, isn't it, to make things easier than it is to tighten things up.
Exactly. Really. Same with economy, right? It's always easier to make it cheaper than to raise the prices.
And kind of final thing, I don't know how much you want to talk about it. I know you are demoing in Gamescom next week, and that's the battle system. So you mentioned it a few times. So what can you sort of tell us about how you've approached that and when we should be expecting it? Maybe I don't know if you can say.
So really. We've always wanted the game to be a hybrid of grand strategy games like Crusader Kings, Civilization, and RTS games like Age of Empires and Total War, right? So I'd say we're still in the experimentation phase. This is like an alpha, if anything. Okay. It's a very rough alpha. So the last 6 months, we've been extremely focused on Dynasty, on the token launch, on the very Web3 parts of things. And now, obviously, with Lordchain going on, that's continuing for quite a while. But we finally have the bandwidth to be able to really, really go deep into the battle system. This is the first really tease that we're showing. We're going to be showing it to press and a few selected investors. I can't really specify a timeline. We're really trying to ship something this year. It won't be the full features, but we're trying to ship something this year. And definitely next year is when you'll start seeing a lot more battle features coming into the game.
Good. We'll leave it at that, and look forward to the videos that no doubt you'll be releasing next week.
We will.
Lovely. Thank you very much, David. It's good as ever.
Thanks a lot, John.
And do it again when battles are out. Absolutely. Thanks to you guys for watching, listening, however you are consuming the podcast. Every week we are putting out new episodes covering what's going on in blockchain games, which is never dull. Always plenty to talk about. So do subscribe, don't miss out, and we'll see you next time.